Hello, friends, and welcome to Sleep Tight Stories. Libby is tired and not feeling much like getting up. She was awake late studying and reading a new book. Margherita headbutts her to get her moving just before her mom starts calling her for breakfast. It is Halloween day, and Libby's mom has the day off, so she decides to decorate the house for the trick-or-treaters. Libby said she is not going out, so her mom asks her to get dressed up and help her pass out candy. When Libby gets home from school, she is amazed at all the decorations her mom has put up. But Margherita does not feel the same way. Margherita and the Ghostly Shadows. Libby ignored the annoying buzz of her alarm. She knew it was time to wake up. No need for all the noise. Cracking one eye open, she peered out the window to see a moody gray sky. Maybe I'll just press snooze and get a few more minutes of sleep, she thought, sinking deeper under the covers. But before she could drift back to sleep, an orange head gently nudged her nose. "Margherita," Libby mumbled, "it's too early for headbutts. Don't you know I need more sleep so I can be my most creative self?" Margherita purred loudly and gave her another nudge, insisting that it was time to get up. "Oh, you silly cat. Fine, I'm up," Libby said, giving in with a laugh. "Anyway, Mom's about to call me any second. Libby, are you up?" Her mother's voice called from the kitchen. "Breakfast is almost ready, and you don't want to miss the bus. It's a long walk to school." Libby sighed, stretching as she swung her feet out of bed. "One day, Margherita," she whispered, "I'll be a grown-up and can do whatever I want. I'll sleep until noon, read books all day, make priceless art, and play with you non-stop." She grinned, imagining the freedom. It will be perfect. Margherita meowed, rubbing against her leg as Libby reluctantly got out of bed to get dressed. "Libby," her mom called again. "I'm up, Mom, just getting dressed and stuff," Libby replied, pulling on her second favorite sweatshirt to match with her second favorite pair of jeans. "I'm a little sleepy this morning," she admitted to Margherita as she put on a pair of colorful wool socks. "First, I had to study for that test, and then I started a new book. I couldn't stop reading until I practically fell asleep with it in my hands. I don't think it was too late, but I wouldn't mind sleeping in today." Libby reached over to give Margherita a few pets and said with a smile, "This is just between us, okay? We are the best of friends." Margherita responded with a soft, pleased meow, as if she understood the importance of their little secret. Libby laughed, imagining her cat as her own furry accomplice. After brushing her teeth, Libby slipped on her headphones, humming along to her latest playlist as she made her way to the kitchen. But when she got there, she saw the strangest thing. "Mom!" Libby exclaimed, louder than she intended. "What's going on?" Her mother jumped, startled. What's wrong?" Realizing her headphones were still on, Libby spoke a bit softer. You're in sweatpants and a sweatshirt. You never wear that to work. Are you sick? Did you lose your job?" "Oh, Libby, you scared me," her mother laughed, holding her hand over her heart. "It's way too early for scares. That's for later tonight." "No, I have the day off. I've been working so much, they told me to take a day to relax." As Libby sat down at the table and poured herself a glass of milk, her mom placed a plate of pancakes in front of her. "So I thought today I'd decorate the house with some spooky stuff for the trick-or-treaters tonight." Libby's eyebrows rose as she saw the plate of delicious-looking pancakes. "I thought we weren't doing Halloween this year. Just a few random pumpkins thrown around or something." "Thrown around? I don't just throw around pumpkins," her mom replied, slightly affronted as she gave Lily the bottle of maple syrup. "I take great care with our decorations." Libby grinned, taking her first bite of the warm, steamy pancakes. "Yum. You should take days off more often," she said, savoring the bite. Margherita meowed, rubbing her side against the table leg as she walked to sit beside her bowl. "Looks like someone else wants pancakes too," Libby laughed. Her mom smiled. "Are you still not going trick-or-treating tonight?" "Nah," Libby said, shaking her head. "We already had the party, remember? None of my friends are going out this year. It's just for little kids anyway." "Well, I think you're still a kid," her mom teased. "Why don't you wear your costume? I'll be dressed as a witch for when the kids come around, and Margherita can be my scary black cat." Libby chuckled. "Margherita? She's about as spooky as a cinnamon roll. She's more of a jazz cat than a scary cat. She's too goofy." Her mom winked. "We'll see if I can convince her with a bit of pizza tonight. I even got her a little bat costume." After putting her plate in the dishwasher, Libby bent down to give Margherita a few extra pets. "Have a good day, you silly jazz cat. Try not to eat too much pizza while I'm gone." With one last headbutt for Margherita, Libby grabbed her backpack and headed out the door. The school day felt long, but with no homework or tests to study for, Libby was looking forward to a fun evening. Maybe some reading, music, and time with Margherita. But as she approached her front door, she stopped in her tracks. The porch was decked out with spider webs draped over the railings, paper bats hanging from strings, and scary-looking pumpkins flickering in the dimming light. Right in the center of the door was a large cutout of a ghost, looking down with what seemed to be an eerie grin. She squinted, noticing spooky lights casting ghostly shadows across the house. "Wow, Mom certainly has been busy," she muttered. Libby opened the door and stepped inside, greeted by even more decorations. Flickering battery-operated candles, casting spooky shadows, ghosts hanging from the ceiling, and tiny plastic spiders dangling from strings. The usually bright and cozy living room now had a ghostly feel, with dim lighting and mysterious shapes stretching across the walls. "Whoa," she whispered, smiling in surprise. Mom really outdid herself. Then she heard a loud thump and the unmistakable sound of paws skittering across the floor. "Margherita? What's up?" she called, stepping further inside. She set her backpack on the floor, expecting Margherita to come over for their usual after-school routine. But instead, Margherita suddenly dashed past her, her fur puffed up, her eyes wide, and her tail straight as a board, as if something invisible was chasing her. "Margherita, what's gotten into you?" Libby giggled, watching her silly orange cat dart from one end of the room to the other. "I didn't know cats could get the zoomies." Margherita slowed down for a moment, glancing back anxiously. That's when Libby noticed something strange. A dark shadow following Margherita's every move, stretching across the floor and up the walls. The cat's eyes grew even wider as she spotted it too. She bolted under the living room couch, eyes glued to the shadow that seemed to follow her there too. "Oh, Margherita," Libby laughed, realizing what was happening. "It's just your shadow, silly. You're scaring yourself. I bet you tried to attack your shadow. Instead, you thought it attacked you." Margherita poked her head out from under the couch, watching the shadow intently as it danced along the wall. She swatted at it, but it only shifted, making her jump back. Clearly unconvinced, she let out a cautious meow and backed up further under the couch, watching her own ghost with suspicion. "Mom, I think our orange cat is afraid of her own shadow, and it's giving her the zoomies or something," Libby called, getting down on her knees to talk to her spooked kitty. "Oh, I wish I could help," her mom called from the kitchen, "but I'm making some treats for us tonight." Margherita peeked out from under the couch, still keeping one eye on the shadow that seemed to follow her. Her tail twitched, and her eyes darted from Libby to the shadow, unsure which was scarier. Libby reached out to soothe her, but Margherita eyed her warily, still on edge, ready to pounce. With the shadows playing tricks and her imagination running wild, even Libby's familiar voice and face felt strange for a moment. "Oh, Margherita," Libby cooed, reaching out gently. "It's just a shadow. It's not a ghost or anything scary. It's just you." Margherita blinked at her, her gaze flickering back to the ghost stretching behind her. With a brave little swat, she batted the shadow, which only shifted and stretched farther up the wall. It looked like a great big ghost cat had swatted back at her. Margherita leaped back, wide-eyed. Libby giggled. "All right, Margherita, if you're not convinced, let me help." She stood up, pulling a small flashlight from her backpack. "See? Shadows come from light," she explained, aiming the flashlight to show how it cast a smaller shadow of Margherita onto the wall. "Look, it's like when you see your reflection in the mirror." Libby moved the flashlight around, making the shadow wiggle. But Margherita was not convinced. She crouched low, tail twitching, watching the shadow intently as it danced and wobbled across the wall. Then, just when it seemed the shadow might vanish, Libby accidentally dropped the flashlight, sending it spinning. The room was filled with dancing shadows that bounced around the walls, making it seem like there were dozens of ghostly cats ready to pounce. Margherita froze, her eyes tracking the sudden onslaught of ghostly shapes that seemed to grow with each spin. With a startled meow, she darted back under the couch, her tail sticking out like a furry orange flag. Oops, Libby whispered, biting back a laugh. I guess my shadow lesson didn't quite work, did it? Margherita let out a disgruntled huff, clearly still unconvinced that the ghosts weren't out to get her. As Libby crouched down and extended her hand, Margherita edged forward and came out from under the couch. I'm not a ghost, you silly cat. I am your best friend, and there is nothing spooky about me, except if I put my costume on later. Then I will be super spooky. But you won't be spooked by me, right? Margherita let out a quiet meow, her eyes weary, and her body ready to pounce on any ghost that might haunt Libby. Just when Libby thought she'd calmed down, a gust of wind made one of the paper ghosts flutter in the corner. Margherita leaped in the air, her tail puffed out, and her wide eyes fixated on the ghost that had, in her mind, come to life. She darted behind the couch, peering out like a spy keeping watch on an enemy. Margherita, it's just paper, Libby giggled, crawling closer. Look, not even a real ghost. But Margherita was again unconvinced. She huddled low, ready to attack, her eyes tracking the flickering shadows on the wall as if daring it to make the first move. Libby decided to gently lift one of the paper ghosts to show her how harmless it was. But as she did, the movement cast a long, eerie shadow across the room. Margherita gasped. Yes, gasped, and took off again, skidding around the coffee table, knocking over a stack of Libby's books, and launching herself into the hallway. Margherita, Libby called, now laughing so hard she could hardly keep up. Come back, you silly cat. Determined to finally put the ghost to rest, Libby followed Margherita down the hallway, waving her hands to try to show her that nothing spooky was going on. But Margherita, still seeing flickering shadows as she ran, picked up speed, zooming from the hallway back to the living room, her paws scrambling as if on ice. Finally, she came to a stop at the front door, where Libby caught up to her, kneeling beside her out-of-breath friend. Margherita, it's just shadows. Look! Libby picked up one of the paper ghosts dangling nearby and wiggled it gently. See? Just paper and string. Margherita blinked, looking at the ghost, then at Libby, and finally letting out a long, exhausted meow, as if to say, Fine, I believe you, for now. Libby gave Margherita a reassuring scratch behind the ears. See? No ghosts, just your own silly shadow, she said, trying not to laugh. Margherita looked at her skeptically, her tail giving one last nervous flick before she plopped onto the floor in dramatic exhaustion. Glad that's settled, Libby's mom called from the kitchen, clearly amused. Guess Margherita's first Halloween was a little too thrilling, Libby giggled. Maybe next year we'll keep it less spooky. I don't think Margherita's ready to be a scaredy cat full time. Libby then picked up her best friend, carried her to her room, and placed her on her bed. Margherita huffed, curled her tail around herself, and closed her eyes as if to say, I've had quite enough for today. But as she drifted off, Libby noticed her paw twitching just a little. Perhaps even in her dreams, Margherita was still on high alert for that ghost cat. And that's the end of our story. Good night. Sleep tight.